It might have been me too.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Jasper Dent. I'm the event coordinator here at McNally Robinson in Saskatoon. I'd like to start off by acknowledging that we're gathered on Treaty 6 territory. This is the land of the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, and Lakota, and homeland of the Métis Nation. It's my pleasure to welcome you all tonight to the Saskatoon launch of Sticky, Sexy, Sad, which has a long title that I keep forgetting, Swipe Culture and the Darker Side of Dating Apps, by Treena, who is here with us tonight. This book is published by University of Toronto Press, and both they and Treena were very kind to reach out and ask us to host this launch here, which we are thrilled to do. We've got a couple quick notes before we get started. First of all, this event is being live streamed, so please just be aware of the web camera up to the front right over here. I'd also like to take this moment to remind you all to silence your phones or to check that you already have. Yes, there's always one person who forgets. It's awkward. Also, during the question and answer portion, I have a microphone, this microphone, that I will bring around to anyone in the audience to ask questions. I know that not everyone likes using it, but we just ask that you please do so that anyone who may be hard of hearing or anyone who's tuning in online can hear what's being said and participate fully. And now I am not hosting this evening. We've got a special guest host tonight, Meredith Hamrock. If you're not familiar with Meredith Hamrock, some of you are, I'm guessing. If you don't know who she is a writer, a comedian. She's worked on over 100 episodes of TV comedy, including a little show that you may have heard of, Corner Gas Animated. She was also the writer-in-residence at the Saskatoon Public Library up until very recently and has published 2 books. Other People's Secrets was published in September 2022 by Crooked Lane Books and was nominated for a Lefty Award in the Best Debut Mystery category. Pretty cool. Her second novel, She's a Lamb, will be published in spring 2025 by ACW Press, so keep an eye out for that. And everyone, please give Meredith a very warm welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me as a host. I think Treena wanted to start off just by reading a section from the book, right? Or no, I'm going to ask you questions first.
I can.
No.
Okay. But let's change it up. Let's change it up. Because not everyone, can everyone hear me?
I think it's just closer.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Because I know that not everyone has read the book yet. So this is just a little vignette from the first chapter. It's called Selfies for Days. And in this chapter, I feature the vignettes of my interactions with 13 different men. And these vignettes they trace the evolution of my journey through swipe culture. From dick pics to the first time I was ghosted to dating during the pandemic. And this is the second vignette in the chapter, and it's called The Butterfly Effect. A beautiful and sometimes terrifying expression of our primal connectedness. The butterfly effect is the idea that small things can have nonlinear impacts on a complex system. The tiny flap of an insect's wing in India can cause a tornado in Idaho, or a seemingly insignificant nanoparticle can turn the world upside down during a pandemic. It's an expression of chaos theory, which is what this guy introduces into my dating life. I'm still friends with him, by the way. However, the experiences gained teach me some of the most important things about swiping, which I feed on while swelling from pupa to winged creature. After getting that here text, I wait about 4 seconds before zipping downstairs to meet my date. Spying him through the back door, I gasp with approval and know that something sexy is going to happen. He looks good, and so do I, in skinny jeans, which were still in style. I still wear them, maybe. And with skinny jeans that make my butt pop and a tasteful blouse that shows just enough boob. We hug awkwardly, smiles beaming from here to the moon that will guide him home a few hours later. He asks playfully, wow, is this a dream? Stardust and oxytocin surge through our veins as we kiss on the couch and then make our way to the bedroom a few minutes later. The sex is fun, and so is the chit-chat afterwards. when I learn that one of his uncles is also an anthropologist. Maybe you'll meet him, he says, in a message later that night, which I read over and over while clutching myself. Slumped on a tiny chair in the Banana Republic changing room 2 days later, I wonder why he hasn't contacted me. After buying a fuchsia V-neck sweater, I reach out to him and ask if my texts are annoying. Gulp. Don't you like me? Didn't we have a great time? What does this mean to you? The indeterminateness cuts into my vulnerability while I rack my dating brain to figure things out. When he refreshes his profile pictures, I cringe and realize that he's not only interested in me. I feel like an idiot for thinking that anything special might happen. Trudging through my neighborhood that night, I listened to Leonard Cohen's song, Tower of Song. He sings about voodoo dolls that don't really look like him and encourages a woman to stick pins in him because it won't hurt. Are these guys on dating apps a bunch of voodoo dolls? Visual images to conduct magic with and on and through. It feels more like hocus pocus and a digital spell gone awry. Where's the eye of Newt when you need it? On our second date, he gives me a cool poster that sparks some much needed hopefulness. Surely he only gives gifts to women he likes. The next day, he likes a selfie I send him, and then his texts dry up. Why did you give me that poster? Why send me beautiful black and white photos of your mother as a child only to ignore me? Where did you go? I'm clueless about how to use dating apps and feel utterly broken open. I inhabit a dim, slippery place between confidence and craving, between holding my head up and not feeling good enough. Such is the tangled path of digital intimacy. Like the monarch butterflies who migrate from Canada to his southern homeland each winter, he too coasts along warm flyways. But unlike these winged creatures who travel long distances to propagate and pass on their genetic material, the only thing he passes on is bittersweet memories of cuteness and cowardice. From this painful encounter, I learned that everyone is talking to a million people at once, and that low expectations may be the best medicine. 2 valuable lessons that help see me through the years of fun and disappointment that follow. Oh my gosh. They'll pry the skinny jeans from my legs. Can I ask what the poster was? Never had a man give me a poster.
The poster was, it's a poster of the movie The Shining, but it was in Spanish.
Oh, very cool. The art,
I
sexy.
got a custom frame. It's actually in my living room. Yeah, it's a nice poster.
Amazing. So we got a little preview, I guess, of the book. And it's very evocative title, Sticky, Sexy, Sad, Swipe Culture, the darker side of dating apps. The darker side not just being the shining poster.
That's right.
So what was behind the title? What brought you to this title?
I like alliteration. A lot of my titles are like, begin with the same letter. I was literally on the bus on the way to work, and the first part of the title came to me, Sticky, Sexy, Sad. And I think it really encapsulates the up and down, the emotional, diverse landscape that dating apps infuse and represent. I think, the sexy part is pretty easy to understand. The sad part, it's hard. It's hard when you want to connect with someone, and these are very imperfect ways to do it. And so I did feel sad often while swiping. It was very frustrating. And the sticky part sort of relates to the way that we hear these messages. It's the only way to date, but we know it's kind of crappy, but we want to connect. And so sometimes we sort of feel stuck. And so that's where the sticky part. And
Sorry.
I initially had a bit of a different title after like the sticky sexy sad part, but I shortened it a bit. And so that was suggested by the publisher.
Amazing. Oh, there we go. Yeah, amazing. I feel like it does really encapsulate that emotional roller coaster that online dating can kind of take you on. I feel like there was a lot of urgency in this book. Like I loved it. I read it so quickly. It was such a inspiring and interesting read that I really connected me to my own kind of dating experiences. But why did you think the book needed to be written from your perspective? Kind of like what was behind kind of, launching into writing this book?
Yeah, well, when I first began swiping, I had no intention of writing a book at all. why me? How could I even write a memoir? I've only written more academic things so far. But as I began to share my experiences and my interpretations of them with a lot of different people using dating apps, it became clear that there really wasn't a book by an anthropologist who is also like a sex positive person in their 40s/50s. And that seemed to be a really important space to inhabit. And also, I wrote the book as a way to sort of dislodge me from a career impasse. Like I've been at the university for a long time, getting a little bit bored with that scene. And I wanted to sort of challenge myself, can you write a memoir? Will it be good? And I began taking a lot of workshops during the pandemic, which was very handy. And so really began working quite diligently on my creative craft. And that was kind of part of the challenge.
Amazing. Yes, I saw inside you. It's marketed as Jane Goodall meets Carrie Bradshaw, which I thought was very funny and
That was me. I thought.
it definitely made me chuckle. And as a professor, I guess you talk a little bit about in the book about talking to your students who are oftentimes in their 20s about dating. What sort of parallels did you see between your experience and theirs?
Well, it was very strange because I was beginning to share my experiences with them, and they're very empathetic, and they're basically like, Treena, your experiences are identical to ours. And I found that mortifying and embarrassing. I'm like, I'm so much older than you. How can my experiences be so similar to yours? And also, it also made me realize that having a diverse, colorful, sort of intimate life was very important to me. And to hear it was the same as someone else's, I'm like, well, that's strange. But it also made me curious, like, how can this be happening? We are two very different women, and then it really sort of encouraged me to look more at the technology piece, and it's like the fact that we are all using very similar technologies that is producing experiences of intimacy that are quite similar. So that was kind of an interesting light bulb moment. And I began sort of exploring that more. And I delve into that quite a lot in chapter 4 of the book.
Yeah, it was really interesting to read because it made me think about my own kind of dating experiences and how when I was first on dating apps, I had like a routine that I would do. So I would had this like one park that was close to my house. I'd ride my bike there. So I was like, oh, if this date is bad, I can just get on my bike and ride away. And never look back.
So smart. So smart.
But I did find there was some comfort in the routine. I was really comfortable at the park. I was kind of comfortable with the escape route. I was comfortable not having a bill kind of between us. I could bring my own, drink from home. It was really casual. And I feel like that kind of safety piece is something that women really, it comes up a lot when we're talking about meeting folks that we've never met before in real life, that you just met on a dating app. So I know you had some experience there. What worked for you?
Yeah, that's interesting. Some people respond when I write about inviting people to my home, specifically the apartment I lived in before I bought a house. And I've had many people say, how would you bring someone to your house? You don't even know them. And then I have to sort of remind them that, in the before times when I was not sober and going out in all sorts of different spaces, doing all sorts of kinds of things in my romantic life, that was quite risky behavior. I felt safe in my apartment. I didn't really, at the beginning of my sobriety, feel comfortable going to a bar to meet someone. And when I was living in my apartment, I mean, the walls were very thin. People knew I was dating. Again, I felt like there was a bit of a safety net. And so that's what safety looked like for me. And I never had any issues, really. I mean, I talk about some of the things that were irritating, but I didn't ever have any scary situations with respect to meeting people in my home. But I did have a scary situation, which I talk about in terms of being catfished, when I invited someone to my home, which was more insulated and isolated than my apartment. But safety is a huge issue, and there's not a lot of ramifications for bad behavior on dating apps. And so a lot of people, maybe especially women, experience a lot of different kinds of violence on these dating apps. And so that's sort of an area that these apps definitely need to improve upon. I mean, in terms of safety, it's always kind of a good idea to let someone know you're going on a date. You might want to share information about who that person is. Each person's sort of safety plan might look different, but I think it's wise. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I had a WhatsApp chat when I was aggressively dating that I would always just send some info to friends about, because yeah, you feel like you need to kind of have almost like a backup plan. And I feel like yeah, there is like a lot of complexity with kind of how we date and the choices we make dating. Did you run into any kind of other complexities in your dating choices that felt? Oh yes.
I was thinking about this question and how I might want to answer it. And I think one of the interesting and perplexing complexities is that when communicating with someone online or multiple people, because we are encouraged, like the volume of people that we move through is tremendous and not really natural. But moving through this volume of people, and it so often felt like we were speaking different languages. And it's so not, and it wasn't just a generational thing in terms of younger men and me, being an older person. But just the way that certain aspects of swipe culture normalize talking about intimacy and just, the way that a lot of the conversations were very boring because they were very similar. And just the fact that so many of the people I was meeting, they just did not want to deviate from their script that they had, whether it was borrowed from online porn or whatever. But they seemed to just want to talk about it in sext and like not meet in person and sort of leave things to our own devices and use your imagination. Ha ha ha. And then you'll do this and then you'll do that. So that's boring. And it was a bit disconcerting. Like, is that really what you think sex is? Some people they do want to stay in the phone and there's a place for that and there's safety in that. And I completely understand that. But knowing that that's not what I want, but they just often revert back. And that was very frustrating.
Yeah, definitely. I read a really weird article just recently about a AI CEO who says that there's going to be like you can make an AI of you and then it'll go on an AI date with my AI and we'll see if our AIs get along. And I was like, oh no, I would never let a computer choose who I would go out with.
Where am I? If the AI person's doing it, I might like that's too confusing. Yeah, no, thanks. Ground control to major no.
Okay, so I need to talk to this guy. I feel like I really like that you shared that you invited people into your home. Because it challenged me a little bit of my own. I was like, oh God, like I don't want anyone to know where I live. Like, gee. And it kind of challenged me to think about my own biases in the way that I would talk to friends about dating and kind of react to friends when dating. Because I think sometimes when you are single, and your friends are, they're coupled, they're married, they're not dating, they can be a little judgmental, they can be a little tough. Like, did you kind of experience that with friends? Or
I didn't really experience like being like, sort of tough on me necessarily, although the odd person would gasp and be like, I can't believe you invite people to your home. A lot of them were just like, oh, I'm so glad I don't have to do that. This sounds terrible. And it's like, thanks. Here. Because it can be challenging, and then they'd also be like, so tell me about your recent date. It was kind of like that. So it felt like they were sort of feeding on me sometimes. But also I didn't really have a lot of close friends who were using the apps. And so there was some distance and loneliness. I was, chatting with other people that I would meet and things like that. But in terms of like folks my own age and the same sort of profession, I felt like a little bit of an outsider. And I think that's also why it took me a long time to actually download an app because I was like, it felt embarrassing.
I can definitely understand that, especially being at different stages of life from your friends and stuff like that, and not having that shared language, or experience. Did that kind of go into the reason that you wrote the book? Do you feel like you wanted to sort of find more connection, or?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, but as I began writing and thinking about like who is my audience, there wasn't just one person that I think the book was kind of designed for. And, I guess women in general, especially Gen Xers who are, of my same cultural ilk, but also men. Over the years, a lot of different groups of men have been reaching out to me, sharing their experiences, and revealing a lot of vulnerability that they have with respect to dating, as well as just our culture at the present time. And that to me was really beautiful. And I think that it's easy to sort of hate on men or hate on the apps. It's much more nuanced, and I think that it's nice that they feel comfortable and they, there's something that resonates with men as well. And so that's, that would be a very interesting next project perhaps.
Oh, that I would love to read that. I feel like there's a point in every app date that I've gone on where you start talking about your app experience because you're like, oh, this is something we have in common, that we can really just kind of dive into, which is very unique. And something that I found really fun and inspirational about this because it's not all like danger and doom and gloom. Like there's definitely like you definitely have a lot of fun. And you talk about kind of centering adventure and pleasure seeking in this book, which I thought was so cool because adventure was something that I felt like when I've been on dating apps a bit, like you're the hero of the story. Every night is a quest. And the quest could go bad. It could go really well. It could go, but ultimately it's this fun little story that you can share with your friends or not, or just kind of, you get to be the hero. So how did you kind of, do you want to talk a bit about this sort of centering adventure and pleasure seeking and how you kind of came about that? Because I really liked that portion.
Well, I think in many ways that's kind of a carryover from how I've lived my life in general. So it wasn't really super unique to dating apps. Life is short, make it count kind of thing. And, the adventure piece and the pleasure piece is also a way of pushing back against the shame that is thrust upon us with respect to sexuality in general, as well as lots of things, especially for women. And I think until we see different stories being told, we're going to sort of remain in these little small spaces, wanting more, but perhaps feeling kind of scared to express some of our desires and things like that. And it should be known that this is not like a how-to, this is not a guide, like do as I do. That's not of interest. Everyone's going to be choosing their own adventure. But I think that being open and honest is what so many people relate to. I'm not perfect here. I've ghosted people. I've flaked out on people in the last minute. I've judged people solely by their appearance. But I think a lot of us have. And so there's kind of a common ground there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like I love how you push back against I feel like there's this sort of narrative that, oh, once you get married, you won. And once you found the one, it's over. And like there's a nice sort of, why don't we tell a different story about pleasure and fun and adventure and living an interesting life?
Yeah, and also singleton, it's not, being single is not, the dark abyss necessarily, unless it is. But, I've been single most of my life. And I've made a lot of different kinds of choices that really are about, sometimes it's directed by trauma I've experienced, but sometimes it's like, really trying to center myself as much as possible, which is not always easy to do as a woman in our society.
Absolutely. I think it's scary for some people that women are doing that now. I've seen like a lot of pushback with this like cat lady narrative online. It's like, oh, you're gonna die alone with your cats. Cats are cute. Yeah. And they get a little laser beam and that's a really funny thing. Yeah, it's more fun than dating sometimes. So, yeah. I wanted to ask you a bit about Bumble because I feel like this is a very kind of there's a lot of kind of you break it down really well in the book, but for folks out there who maybe don't know what Bumble is, do you want to just give a kind of definition and then we can go a bit more?
So when I began using Bumble in 2017, their main design and how they like distinguished themselves from other apps was that on the hetero version, only women could extend the opening line once a match was made. Men had to wait to be communicated to. And that was designed as a way to put women in the driver's seat. It's supposed to be empowering and a feminist. That was one of the big ways that this app was marketed as. It's the world's first feminist dating app. Chapter 3 is devoted to this, kind of unpacking and unraveling how and why it's not really feminist, and also some of the dangers associated with promoting this sort of dated idea about feminism, like girls are going to do it for themselves, because again, they sort of forget about how men are going to respond. And while men should maybe be okay with waiting to be asked, they really weren't. And there was a lot of misogyny and very specific anti-feminism pushback on this app. Now, the context is important as well because it was like the dawn of the Me Too movement when feminism was really being reshaped and burned to the ground, and we're still rebuilding it again. So you kind of expect some of that pushback, but then it's like, why are you even on the app? You know it's feminist, right? It's designed in this way. But that's because people are often on multiple apps as a way to maximize their dating success. But I found a lot of problems with Bumble, and I also found that almost half of my opening lines were ignored. I was like, is this feminist and is this even effective? And because almost half of my opening lines were ignored, it's the only app where I would sometimes include more spicy physical photos of myself as a way to try and gain more success. But it was, and I kept on running out of people because there weren't that many people using it. And so it really wasn't a great experience. But actually, the day that my book came out, they completely revamped their design. And now it's not women who need to make the opening line. Now anybody can. So it's a bit more equitable. So that's interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah. They also have a clock. So most dating apps, you would, you swipe on someone, you get a match, you're just sort of hanging out there forever, maybe. But on Bumble, you have to message them within 24 hours, right?
Yes, you have to message them within 24 hours. And when you open the app, it'd have a circle around the guy's head. And it'll be like 1 hour. And then it's like red. It's like danger, 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 expiry date, expiry date.
You're gonna lose the hot guy, get out of here.
But if you're just not ready to make the move, you can purchase like a boost thingy for like $2 or $3 and like extend it so you don't have to make your decision quite yet, but you can just sort of keep that in, on the back burner for pay.
Very capitalist of that.
Very feminist, very feminist.
Yes, the autopilot thing where you are just, did you copy and paste your opening lines?
No, I didn't. They were often way too long because I'm just like, anyways, I didn't really know what I was doing. But no, I mean, I copied and pasted a couple of, but never an opening line because I mean, I really took it seriously. I did take it seriously. So no, I didn't. No. Some of them are shorter than others, certainly, but
Well, if you ever need one, I saw one on TikTok that is, which Shrek character would you rather do? It's a good way to find someone with a sense of humor. Um, Another part of this book that I really connected with, really liked, that you just kind of shone a light on, is the experience with ethical non-monogamy or polyamory. I came back to the dating apps last year and I was like, oh, everybody's doing this now. I didn't know what it was. Do you mind just kind of telling us what those terms are and maybe give us a bit of a review? I was curious if you thought dating apps as an anthropologist, do they encourage maybe this sort of new?
yeah, I think so. Sexuality is changing, family structures are changing, relationship structures are changing. And I think monogamy is being sort of, coming apart a little bit. And there are different ways of doing relationships that involve more than just a couple. And so polyamory and non-monogamy is becoming much more popular among a lot of different communities. And it's a way to, enhance pleasure, but also just take into account different kinds of interests that people have. And, if we look at the rate of divorce in our society, it's quite high, right? So it's a way of pushing back against some institutions that seem to not serve all of us well all of the time. And yeah, I did have an experience seeing more than one person at once, and it was kind of interesting. And I do think that the apps provide access to people that we might never ever meet. And that's certainly true for pretty much everybody I met, because I didn't just meet people in my small kind of boring city, but sort of, on the perimeters as well as when I traveled. And that was really exciting. And it really can create new sort of social and sexual networks that were not there. And so I think it does give us access and gives us an opportunity to try these things on for the first time. And that can be harder to do in person for a multitude of reasons. So I do think that there is some interesting productivity there.
Yeah, because I guess that was another thing that I loved about the book, and I don't want to spoil too much. There's so much good stuff in here; it's real juicy. You got to get it. But I really loved the idea that there's some kind of like movement between class now that people are experiencing on dating apps. So they're dating kind of outside of their normal social circles. Like, is that something that you kind of enjoyed about it?
I guess I didn't really think about that because I've always been sort of an equal opportunist, and really truly. So it wasn't a conscious thing. I would say I didn't really interact with lots of really wealthy people, but so kind of it felt folks on a similar sort of. I mean, perhaps maybe less professional, if I can say that. Like I didn't see a lot of other profs, but I didn't really want to. That was a relief, frankly. But yeah, so I don't really know if I, can sort of talk about too much specifically about the class piece. Yeah.
Um, this book, it's really personal, and you shared some kind of a personal chapter, and I am terrified of writing memoir. I'm just terrified of sharing about my own life. Something to unpack in therapy, perhaps. But I'm curious if you ever struggled with, questions of what to include, or kind of what did you struggle with? Oh, am I being too candid? Am I being too open? Is that scary?
Yes. Yes. I think it was scary, but I was very committed for this being a memoir from the very beginning, not being an academic project. And I, again, sort of took advantage of a lot of different workshops with people who do memoir. And I read so many different ways of writing about one's life, and also interweaving some of the more scholarly pieces as well, and how to do that. And so some of the most difficult things related to some early trauma. But I think that, again, sort of similar to the pushing back against shame issue, I really wanted to, show the parts of my life that would keep the story moving. Everything is not in here, and everything doesn't need to be in here. There are many more books to be written. But it was, a lot of writing is about decision making. Does this really serve a purpose? Do I need to go into this detail? Do I need to mine this experience a little more and see what happens? So I really enjoyed the writing process. I mean, it's not perfect, but I think it's pretty darn good. And it's really exciting, and yeah.
You mentioned some of the men potentially have you stayed in touch, or
Yes.
they are still friends. They read portions of it. What was that like?
Oh, it was great, because I am, connected with a number of them just as friends at this point. And they've followed me, and we have followed each other, and that's kind of interesting and speaks to the nature of our connection. Okay, we don't have like an intimate relationship anymore, but we're still interested in each other, which I think is pretty cool. And also it reflects the fact that I'm sort of a person that they want to keep in touch with, and they talk about things that they don't talk about with a lot of other people. And when I offered, I'm like, do you want to read some of this? Nice to get like a male perspective and just to share it. And they gobbled it up, and what they all said is that men need to read this. Men need to read this because we don't know how women are experiencing dating apps, and we don't understand women a lot anyways. And that has been kind of a consensus since the book has been out, and I've published some other things about masculinity and dating apps. And many, many men have reached out and said thank you. They've shared their dating successes and woes and challenges, and they've been vulnerable. And that to me is it's a pleasure. And I think that we need to make more spaces for men to do that work, because without that, we're never going to get ahead in any way, shape, or form, because the patriarchy screws them over as well in a very, very significant way. And acknowledging that together is really important. So yeah.
Did you find that you were able to get common ground with them about dating stuff? Like, was there common ground sometimes?
Sometimes, yeah, because I too would ask, like, so what have your experiences been like? And they were kind of a little bit blasé. They're like, yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. We get one line answers, and the women are talking to a bunch of people, and some of the, copy and paste responses, or, they feel like they have to be at least 6 feet tall and make at least figures, and have a very luxe lifestyle. Is sort of seen as aspirational for everybody, which is not attainable for a lot of men. And so a lot of them feel like they really do not measure up. And there are more men on dating apps than women. And so they do have a more difficult time in some ways. And so there's sort of like a passive acceptance of this new sort of terrible normal. But when we would probe it a little bit more, they'd be like, it was evident that they would like more, but they're just not sure what other avenues to do it in. Sometimes they're really afraid to approach a woman in person, sort of post Me Too to a certain degree, because they don't want to be seen as aggressive, but yet they want to connect. So it's pretty difficult.
I feel like this sort of ties in nicely to this idea of saying no. And you delve into this in the book a little bit about sometimes you didn't feel like you could show up authentically, and say no. And that was really, there was something with the apps that made that difficult. Do you have any advice about saying no?
Well, yeah, I mean, I talk about that in a few different places in terms of saying no, like saying no to a date that's kind of going sideways and you don't know how to get out of it. That can be sort of a weighing of risks,
Will it be more dangerous to say no now, or can I kind of sneak around and not sneak, well, sort of go through the motions and sort of get out safely. That's kind of a way that saying no can be difficult. Also saying no because a lot of women, we are, raised to be caregivers and often put other people first. So asserting ourselves, we hear this narrative, think about yourself, you're the most important person, the relationship with yourself is the most important thing. And it's true, but it doesn't mean that it's easy to assert ourselves in a lot of situations where we should be. So those are some examples of where it's difficult to say no, for sure. And there were a number of instances where I sort of hung out with some people that I wasn't super thrilled with, but because the in-person dates were so challenging, I didn't say no. And I was also worried about hurting people's feelings. So all these things combined to make some of the decision-making kind of fuzzy.
Absolutely, because you want to be kind, right? You're a lovely person. I totally understand that moment, but at the same time, you don't want to lead someone on it. So it's balancing that truth with, what's next. But yeah, I definitely encountered that. There were just, I was very vehement. I'm never going to ghost anybody. I'll always send that uncomfortable text. It's just like, hey, like, just, this is a friend vibe. But there were a couple of times where I was like, if I say no to this person, I'm just going to ghost because I'm scared. I do not want them to go on my Goodreads account and give me 1 star review. Yeah, or any other terrible thing to do, but that's what kept me up at night. Yeah, but I guess we could just launch into my final question and then we can ask for some questions from the crowd. Yeah. But do we have any advice for someone newly approaching dating? They want to start dating on apps. Yeah. They want to try and get out there in person. You can use my Shrek line if you want.
Well, I think, for anyone who's beginning dating, maybe especially if they're considering the apps or they've been on the apps already, they're taking a break, it's going to be challenging. It's going to take a little while. I think that's kind of an opening thing, but also don't always blame yourself for some of the frustrations that you encounter. I think we often internalize a lot of the outcomes of our dating experiences, and while obviously our behavior impacts how we experience things, these apps are designed from a very particular cultural location, right? It's white bro culture in a large way. And the algorithms are like mini slot machines. And so we are withheld certain kinds of matches and we are flooded with other kinds of matches. And so it's really an artificial kind of rhythm that is dictating who comes up in our feeds and that as well. So that's really important just to be mindful of, be sort of aware that there is this broader context that has an impact. So try not to be too hard on yourself. I think that's really important. Also, think of ways to expand and enrich your dating ecology. Dating apps are not like fabulous in a lot of ways. And so are there other in-person ways, other community sort of events, other people that there are examples of like classified ads coming back, which I think is pretty cool. Also, there's a recent article, people in San Francisco were putting like flyers up on telephone poles for like either themselves or like, find my Brenda hottie, it's sort of like really lo-fi old school ways to communicate desire. And also it's kind of fun like that, right? And it's more within your control. When you're using an algorithm, it's not within your control entirely, right? There's always someone else in the room swiping with you. And so there's interesting ways that people are thinking about sort of taking more control over their dating lives. And we're seeing a lot of resistance to dating apps in general from some of the younger generations, especially Gen Z, who are just kind of like, okay, boomer, no, and thinking about different ways of doing intimacy, partnership. Celibacy is also really apparently trending right now. People marrying their friends instead of marrying like intimate partners. So there's lots of interesting things happening. But just try and mix it up a little bit. I think that's kind of a good idea.
That is wonderful advice. Yeah, except Gen Z loves their running clubs, and I think running clubs are just a bit much for me. But to each their own. I shouldn't be judgmental. That's what this book's all about. I also saw a website where you can put a bounty up. So you can say, $5,000, find me a husband. This is what I want. And then it's a husband. You stay married for a couple of years. You pay them, I guess.
Oh, wow. Wow.
That's, it gets more or less capitalist, I guess.
Yes.
I think I like the posters better.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the localized.
So we've thrown around a lot of really cool dating tidbits and stories up here. Does anyone have any questions for Treena? And please use the microphone.
Hi,
It's on. You might want to.
do you know much about the War of the Roses?
Not a great deal, no.
It's like where they call and pretend to be like selling bouquets of roses to see if their husband is cheating or spouse is cheating.
No, I don't know what, is that like an online thing or that's it?
It's like on the radio, like the big radio. I just found out about it. It just came up in my algorithm on Facebook.
Okay.
But what's your thoughts on like radio station trying to help a spouse finding this out? You think it's not appropriate or appropriate or?
That sounds a little complicated, kind of farming your intimate life out to a radio station. I'm not sure if that, I mean, but people are sometimes, not always fair in love and war, right? But that might not be the best way to necessarily sort of communicate with your spouse about what's going on, although those are very difficult conversations to have, that's for sure. Yeah, so maybe not.
Other questions?
Who here has used a dating app? Okay. All right. So does any of like some of snippets of our conversation, does it resonate? Is it hitting? Yeah. Nasha, do you want to share something? No. No? Is anyone currently swiping?
Are you swiping
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
right now?
Not at this moment.
Is there an app that you've used that you kind of prefer?
I like Facebook dating
Yeah.
because they have that where they have a friend section and then they have like that's not like strictly dating and it's friends.
Right.
And so I like that because it for me it's less pressure because it's like, oh, if the dating app is not working,
Yeah.
I can go to the friend
Yeah.
thing and try making friends.
Yeah, that's nice. There's some like flexibility for you there.
I feel like I don't know if other ones are like that, but that's what I like.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Nash, did you? Is there anyone in particular?
I think that Tinder's great, except I got a lifetime ban. They won't tell me what. That is my life.
Oh,
That's a bad
Wow.
bar, I will say.
wow.
Like for me, right?
Oh, wow. So which one are you using now?
Facebook.
Facebook, okay, yeah. A lot of people like Hinge. They're a little bit different than most of than Bumble or Tinder, because some of the opening questions that you have to sort of put together before, even like chatting with someone, they're a bit more complicated and a bit more personable than just like age, gender, how far you're willing to travel. So some people are kind of liking Hinge.
Yeah, something that's cool about Hinge is they have a voice note feature, so you can put the sound of your voice. 'Cause that was always the weirdest thing when you meet someone. I feel like you didn't like their voice. So.
Yeah.
Why on dating apps do they have like they want you to be honest and then you're honest with them and then they like don't like it anymore. But they tell you they give you mixed signals. I don't know if because you're women, maybe you could explain that.
Well, I think people don't tell the truth for all sorts of reasons, and usually it's connected with vulnerability, right? Like telling the truth might seem boring, or it might seem kind of scary, or you're afraid of being rejected. So sometimes that's why people kind of fudge the truth a little bit, but I certainly can't speak for all women or the people that you've interacted with. But I mean, I did find that frustrating because I felt like I was being pretty honest, pretty consistent, pretty authentic, and just I did not always receive that back from a lot of the people that I communicated with. And it really made it feel like, what's the point of putting all of this labor into this when you're just going to get sometimes something back that's subpar?
I think it brings bad habits for me, I'm speaking, I don't know for you, but for like your personality where you're backtracking from who you want to be, but you're kind of a slave to the app and
Yeah,
and
and
the
trend of
And I think that behavior is more likely to happen in the digital sphere as opposed to in person, when you
Yeah.
kind of, you are, this is me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, thank you.
yeah.
Heather, did you have?
Hi.
Hi.
I just watched the Ashley Madison
Yes.
documentary,
So did I.
and I was curious your thoughts on that, and if you came across a lot of married men looking for affairs.
Yes, well, everybody on dating apps, they're not all single. And dating is not even the primary thing for a lot of people. Some people, they're just on it to see who's out there, or to spy on an ex, or just to be like a creepy swindler. But in terms of the Ashley Madison, so Ashley Madison was a website, I think it's still operating, which is wild. Their tagline was "Life's short, have an affair." And so it was a company designed to match people, or give people the opportunity to match, to have illicit relationships. But it was, marred by a lot of sort of technical issues, consumer issues, leadership issues. And it turns out that a lot of the women on there were bots. And there was like this whole issue around security. It was advertised as a very safe space for people's intimate and financial records. And there were a few different like huge like breaches in the system, and all of people's information was released all over the world. At one point, there were over 30 million members globally. And, people took their own lives. It had a lot of negative impacts. Relationships failed, businesses failed. A lot of things happened that was really problematic. And, but the idea, I mean, infidelity is always going to be here. But, when someone is taking advantage of it to that degree and not really telling the truth, that's, sort of inexcusable, especially when it's impacting so many people's lives. Yeah. What did you think of it, Heather?
I thought it was very interesting documentary. I didn't realize that it was mostly bots at the end.
Yes.
Like that's
Yeah.
what people were talking, and that there were so many on there just looking for excitement.
Yeah.
They weren't actually looking to have an affair. They just wanted
Right.
to spice things up. And
Right.
I just never thought of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was-
Duly noted.
Yeah.
They seem to be very good at getting money out of people also.
Yeah.
They're really good. It seems like that's a dating app trend that,
Yes. Yeah.
good to avoid for sure
Sure.
if you're opening your pocketbook too much.
Yeah. More questions? Any comments for anyone who's read the book or listened to it? Because the book's also available on Audible if you prefer to listen as opposed to read the paper copy. Not all at once. Nobody? Bueller? Yeah, do you wanna, do you have any other questions? Sorry for the on spot.
There's so many questions.
Okay, all right.
Are you still on dating apps?
No. No, survey says no. Um, ah, because I did have a very significant thing for about 2 years. That's sort of on hold, but sort of still happening. And I'm just, my book is my boyfriend at the moment. And so I'm not really that eager to get swiping again, to be perfectly honest, because it's hard. And I have this to promote, and that is like the most important, one of the most important relationships in my life.
We love a book boyfriend. Especially at McNally Robinson.
Hi, Treena. Hi, Kathy.
So I'm gonna ask more of a social science question because I'm interested in digital technology and algorithms and kind of social and political impacts and stuff like this. And I'm just thinking, I'm just wondering if using apps like this is having an impact on real life dating. Because I'm just thinking about since the pandemic and everybody started doing online shopping, the stores have gone really, pathetic. If you go shopping for clothes, there's hardly any selection. And things are, hangers are or, clothes are dropped on the floor, nobody's taking care of it,
Mm,
things like that.
mhm.
So I'm just thinking that kind of in a parallel type of situation, if people are using these apps and swiping, is this making it so that other ways of connecting with people who might be, interesting partners, or fun dates, have kind of atrophied?
Hmm. Well, I think, the other ways, the more in-person, more traditional ways of meeting will always be with us, I think. But I think that the over reliance on digital technology does dull our interpersonal skills. And I talk about that a lot. It makes it seem like it is profoundly much more difficult than it needs to be to meet and connect in person. Because the phone is a retreat. People use it at school, they use it in all these different areas of life, including romance. And so even though a lot of us know that online stuff, including dating apps, are not necessarily that great for us, we do return to it because that swipe culture has become so normalized. But I think that we are seeing some interesting pushback again from mainly some younger generations who are, really not into the apps, and they're looking for more sort of rewilding kind of options, which I think is really exciting. And I think right now the dating app industry is in absolute crisis. Stocks are plummeting. There's shifts in like CEO structures. And so I think that, there's a bit of a reckoning right now. And I'm hoping that what that means is that we're going to have some interesting, more inclusive, diverse leaders at the helm so that the algorithms feel more interesting and representative for more of us. And also if they lower the cost related issues, like these companies are so loaded right now anyways, right? So if there's a way to just make it a bit more democratic and inclusive. But I think, in general, the over reliance on the digital piece is something that is going to be, a continuing theme for sure. Yeah, it's a really good question.
On that note, do you think a feminist dating app is possible? And what would it even look like? I don't know.
Of course it's possible. Yes, we can design the kind of technology that we have, like it's insane. Absolutely it is. But the question is, why has it not been done? Feminism is not going anywhere, and feminism is not about women who hate men. I mean, some, I guess that is their vibe. But as I talk about in the book, there's a multitude of ways of being a feminist. And a lot of men are feminists that I know. And, for myself, feminism is about caring for everybody, right? And putting safety and things like adventure, but also pleasure and just, who we are as people. Life is short, sort of at the fore, and so it's absolutely possible. What it will look like, I don't know, watch the space. I'm not too sure. But there's enough user feedback. I'm not the only one to do a critique of Bumble and some of the other dating apps. When you download these apps on Google Play or wherever, you can read the reviews and they're quite scathing. I'm not the only voice here. And, one would hope that in product development processes that people would look to the reviews and take user insights into consideration when they shape them.
Yes, don't give away those ideas for free. Make those tech guys pay for it. That's right. Any other questions, thoughts? Anybody here meet someone on an app? Ever work out?
Wow, one hand. Okay, okay.
A friend.
Okay, good. Well, that counts. That's important. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, all the people that I met didn't all become somebody that I had a relationship with. Some of them, we're still friends just because that's all.
Shining posters.
The shining poster, that's right. In my living room. Yeah.
I didn't have to use a Shrek pick one.
I've seen other hands. I feel like I did see. Yeah, yeah. Which app did you meet on our website?
Plenty of fish.
Oh, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I know someone who got married off of that.
Oh, yeah, I do too. Like it seems like one of the olden time ones, but I think it's still working. I think it's still out there. Yeah.
There's also a job in Vancouver you can do where you are paid minimum wage to look at all of the recorded photos. Yes. That are LinkedIn of people's, intimate parts, but you can see if anybody's misbehaving. They only pay $15 an hour, which I think is too low.
Yeah, and most social platforms have those, and those can be extremely traumatic. There's some documentaries and research about the people who are hired from Meta right? So all the sort of like very inappropriate things that try to get posted on Facebook, and those are often farmed out to very marginalized communities, often non-English speaking folks. And so it's another way that these, the tech empires are wildly inequitable. Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of like intimate photos, sorry. Were you ever worried as like a professional about like being blackmailed or any of that kind of being leaked?
That did cross my mind more than once, but I didn't really share photos that were extremely explicit, if you want to say that. There are requests for those things, but it's like, you know. But yeah, I mean, that is sort of something in the back of my mind, but I was sort of trusting some of the individuals, but also being mindful of the kinds of things that I was sharing. But I mean, I know that they can be doctored, and it can't even not even be you, but it could be my face. And that has happened to some of my students on platforms like Instagram, where they've been extorted for money because people have doctored photos. So it happens on a lot of different platforms. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I heard a really bad story about that happening to a friend of mine as well. Just, yeah, really gross. But hopefully there's legal, yeah, pathways for that sort of thing now. Gosh, 4 minutes left. Did you ever do eHarmony? That's very dated, I know. I feel like, okay, so dating websites used to be, I feel like they sold themselves as like, we're gonna find you a better partner than just you being out in the world. And I feel like that definition sort of was like eked away. But I remember the eHarmony questions, like,
Yeah, when I was in Vancouver, yeah, it's like 300 questions. I don't think I finished it because I just got too frustrated. There were just too many questions, and also it felt like something for more mature people at the time. So it did not yield anything.
it wasn't cool. As an anthropologist, do you think personality quizzes or tests or anything like that, are those helpful with dating?
Personality quizzes like.
I sometimes see people doing their like what is it, the Myers-Briggs, the ENTP.
Oh, I
see. That's me.
Yeah. Those kinds of standardized things have been shown to be like, it depends on who they're designed by. Like, I don't think that they really reflect a lot of the ways that different kinds of communities think, different people think, neurodivergence, different kinds of various kinds of identities. I mean, psychology can be a kind of a white in the box discipline, not exclusively, but I think the over reliance on categorizing ourselves can kind of get us into a bit of a pickle too, because then we're kind of, oh, that's who I am, and you can kind of close yourself off from discovering other aspects of who you are.
Yes, I saw somebody said the Myers-Briggs is astrology for MBAs, which that's great. Yeah, so I guess we should wrap it up. Any final thoughts?
I just wanted to say a huge thank you. It's so special to be at McNally, but also to be in my home city. And so I just wanted to thank everyone for coming and for buying the book and for supporting me for so many years. It's been off and on a 7-year journey. It was longer than my PhD. So it's a big deal. So I just wanted to extend a huge thank you to everybody who's here.
Amazing. Yeah, buy it, read it. It's great.
Thank you so much to both Treena and Meredith for being here. If you would like a copy of Sticky Sexy Sad, we've got some up here. We've got some on the back desk over there, and you're welcome to get your copy signed before you buy it. Just be sure to stop by the cash desk on your way out. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight, and have a good evening.
Okay.